Episode 222, Fermentation and Rotations. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 13th of July 2020. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. I know we all miss things in life. I'm guilty as charged. So imagine my surprise to have only just come across the process of fermenting organic waste rather than composting. In a strange way, putting food waste through ruminants does this too, and in 24 hours. But what I'm talking about is the formalised process of fermentation. The name bokashi turns up all over the Google search. It's from the Japanese for fading away, possibly, and it refers to an anaerobic fermentation process. From the Wikipedia page, bokashi, in brackets, horticulture. Quote, the basic steps of the process are 1. Organic matter is inoculated with lactobacilli. These will convert a fraction of the carbohydrates in the input to lactic acid by homolactic fermentation. 2. A household bokashi bin with a supply of fermentation starter, namely bran inoculated with lactobacilli. 3. Fermentated anaerobically for a few weeks at a typical room temperatures in an airtight vessel. The organic matter is altered and preserved in a process closely related to the making of some fermented foods and silage. The preserve is normally applied to the soil when ready or can be stored unopened for later use. 4. The preserve is mixed into soil. This exposes it to air, whereupon the lactic acid oxidizes to pyruvate, a fundamental energy carrier in the biological processes. And 5. The oxidized preserve is soon consumed by the indigenous soil life, disappearing in inverted commas within a very few weeks at normal temperatures. Earthworm action is typically prominent, such that the amended soil acquires a texture associated with vermicompost. End quote. This seems a good way or even a better way to deal with organic matter than the traditional composting, simply from a speed point of view. I'll look into the scaling of the process after a few test runs. The benefits to earthworms and the other soil biota has my attention. According to the same article, the benefits are as follows. Quote, the most important are, the input matter is fermented by specialist bacteria and not decomposed. The fermented matter is fed directly to field or garden soil without requiring further time to mature. As a result, virtually all input carbon, energy and nutrients enters the soil food web, having been neither emitted in greenhouse gases and heat, nor leached out. End quote. Now this is almost too good to be true, but certainly enough to pique my interest. The lactobacillus is available from our local hardware at $19 for 5 kilos. Now finding a way to make this stuff on property would also be useful, but I'll work with what I have available now. To scale this up to a market garden size will take some thought. I could use 200-litre barrels and fill them with vegetable waste from the greengrocers or a restaurant when they reopen, maybe. The problem with bringing things on farm is the provenance. Were the materials that I've collected grown organically? What sides were used? Herbicide, fungicide, pesticide and so on. Do I really want to bring these things on here? Well, clearly, obviously not. Or do I set aside a dedicated garden to just grow material for the barrel and perhaps rotate that through the system? So many questions and much more research is needed, but updates will be posted as they occur. The bokashi material feeds nicely into the rotations I've been working on to start next spring. At this stage, the rotation looks like this, and each one of the 5 beds will be in 12 months ahead or behind as we go through the system. At the moment, we'll start off with the end of the cycle, which is also the beginning, which is nice and zen. So garlic planted back in May is to be harvested in January, followed by broad beans to keep the ground covered and add nitrogen. Then maize, probably a Hopi blue maize as it ripens into a cold, wet autumn, which is handy here. But equally we could do sweet corn because I love that stuff. And I got a really good crop last year in the garden at work. And we'd follow that up with peas again to keep the ground covered and add nitrogen. Follow that with the potatoes and use the pigs to clean that up after we've taken what we need for ourselves. And then follow that with vetch, which is a different legume again, to keep the ground covered and add nitrogen, and then follow that with the curcubits, pumpkin, squash, cucumbers, etc. Get what we need out of that, then let the pigs rummage through that, and it's then followed by mustard. In this case, a variety called cappuccino, which is a biofume, which controls nematodes and other unpleasant things in the soil, and also act as a green manure to set things up for the garlic again as our predominant cash crop. Just let it sit there, and I've been running it backwards and forwards in my mind, and it does seem to be a workable rotation. So we'll be here 2 years this December, and so I've been able to move from observation of weather and soil conditions to actually having a plan. The garden units will be about 700 square metres each. I could just drop the potato and vetch part of the rotation and have a 4-year process at almost 900 square metres per unit. But I'm not real sure yet. We'll just see how we go when the time comes. I've got a few months to make a decision because the soil doesn't really warm up here till November. Either way, large amounts of organic matter will be slashed and then planted into, and the water holding capacity of the soil should increase over time. We've got really deep topsoil here, but it bothers me the way the water pools on the top. We might have to look at adding some gypsum to the soil as well. Now, the increased water holding capacity will help during summer, as we're in a cool, temperate Mediterranean climate for the moment, and January and February can be dry. But equally, we're in the roaring 40s, so storms can arrive, in inverted commas, out of the blue, or at least the southwest. The thought is to add the fermented bokashi compost, in inverted commas, onto the mustard 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4, before it's slashed. That way it's incorporated into the soil, and then when we add the slash mustard material, it'll really kick the soil off, and then we can plant the garlic into that. Now, all this is dependent upon how quickly the bokashi system can be scaled up and having a feed source, as I said earlier, for the digesters. And certainly as the days lengthen here in the southern hemisphere, I mean, they're only just lengthening, but lengthening they are, thoughts have turned to spring. That and the fact that it's unseasonably warm at this time of year also helps probably. I suspect the depths of winter to hit us next month, but if not, then we're already into spring, sort of early spring. I'd also like you to keep your ears out for a special bonus episode this week, an announcement that I've been working on and building up to for some 8 months. And with that, it only remains for me to say that there's a link to a Udemy course in the show notes entitled Growing a No-Dig Garden, if you'd like some assistance with your gardening. You can also go to or send people to episode 207, where I discuss a quick response garden to get yours happening really quickly. And remember, in this unusual time, if we put the groundwork in now, we can all change the world, even if it's only a little bit to start with. And we will begin the process of decarbonising the air and recarbonising the soil. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back next week.